Hello! You already save a lot of money every year thanks to our videos, so save on car parts too. Buy them on the Mr. Auto app. Shipping is free.
You will find the bulk shock absorbers used in the video exclusively on the Mr. Auto website and through the link in the description. Turn your engine off, pull up the handbrake, pull on the bonnet release lever and open the bonnet. In order to change the front shock absorbers on your vehicle, you must lift the front of the car and remove the wheels to have complete access to the suspension system. Raise the front of the vehicle and put it in the two-axle stands. We strongly suggest watching the tutorial, raising your vehicle safely before carrying out this step. You will then be able to take off the wheels. Don't forget to slide them under the vehicle. You now have to remove the stabilizer link bar. It connects the stabilizer link so that the wheels are always in contact with the ground. These elements can often get jammed, so use a penetrating oil to facilitate the operation. Start by loosening and removing the upper tie rod end on the sway bar link. To do this, take a 16mm spanner and a 5mm Allen key. Stop the rotation of the tie rod end with the Allen key and remove the nut using the spanner. Remove the nut, then the sway bar link. It may be necessary to lever it to make this part easier. Spray the ABS sensor hose with penetrating oil to remove them more easily. Do the same with the brake hose. Then spray the hose frame screw and then the two screws on the base of the shock absorbers. Using a socket wrench and a 10mm socket, unscrew the hose frame, then remove it. Using a socket wrench and an 80mm socket, unscrew the two screws on the base of the shock absorber. Hold the nut with an 80mm spanner, then remove it. During this operation, you will work on the steering system of your vehicle. When you change the front shock absorbers on your vehicle, it is advised to check the wheel alignment. To separate the shock absorber base from the hub carrier, lever it off with a fork. The base of the shock absorber should now be free. Now, to disassemble the front shock absorbers, it is first important to remove the windscreen frame and then the windscreen wipers. Before removing the windscreen wipers, place adhesive tape in order to keep a precise indication of their location at the end position. This will make it possible to correctly position them when reassembling. Remove the lock nut covers on the windscreen wipers with a 16mm spanner and unscrew the lock nuts. Remove the windscreen wiper arms by making small movements up and down. Take out the waterproofing joint on the windscreen bay by pulling it upwards from one end to the other. To remove the windshield frame, lift the 4 plastic holding rivets lever with the help of a thin flathead screwdriver. Then remove them. Now remove the windshield frame. You now have to remove the metallic frame. Remove the polystyrene insulation. Then, using a socket wrench, an extender and a 10mm socket, remove the holding screws on the metallic frame. Then, remove the frame. You can now access the heads of your car's shock absorbers. Using a socket wrench and a 13mm socket, unscrew the 3 holding screws on the shock absorbers. Once released, hold the shock absorber in one hand and finish off the unscrewing with the other hand. Put the shock absorber to the side. Start by checking that the new shock absorber, the new strut support bearings, and the accessories correspond to the old parts. In order to change the shock absorbers, you must now separate it from the spring. You can find a description of the tool used in the video, which we think is the most adapted to the operation. Careful, pay attention as you compress the spring. This is not without risk and should be undertaken paying very careful attention. Block the tool in a vise, this will make it easier to use. Install the shock absorber on the tool, then tighten the mobile flange against the spring, controlling its position carefully. Check that they're properly held by the locking studs, then slowly compress the spring using the socket wrench and an appropriate socket. Once the shock absorber is free in the spring, you can use an 80mm offset wrench and a 6mm Allen key to unscrew the suspension strut support bearing, removing the bearing. Remove the spring on the shock absorber, then the stop and the protective sleeve. Take the new shock absorber and all the accessories that you will find on the video description on the Mr. Auto side. Push the actuator to remove the security lock. You need to pump it several times on the actuator to get the system going. Unscrew the lock nut on the stem. Position the protective sleeve in the spring. Slide the shock absorber and then the stop.
Please support us, subscribe and like the video, that will be really cool.
Pay careful attention to place the bottom of the spring so that it supports the shock absorber flange. Take the nut from the shock absorber stem and the support bearings. Put the bearing in place and finish screwing the nut on the shock absorber stem. Firmly tighten. Unscrew the spring compression tool, paying attention to the position of the spring on the lower shock absorber support. You have now finished preparing the new part. Start by putting the shock absorber in place . Then screw the head of the shock absorber back in, start by hand . Then finish off with a socket wrench. The final tightening should be done with a torque wrench. Using a wire brush, clean the hub carrier to make it easier to insert it into the shock absorber. Then put the screws back in place. Finalize the tightening of the screws with a torque wrench. Screw the hose frame back in . And put the hoses back onto it. Put the stabilizer link bar into its upper housing and screw it in. Then put the metallic frame back in. Put the insulation back in. Put the windshield frame back in place along with the plastic rivets. Put the waterproof joint back on. Then the windscreen wiper arms without tightening excessively. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle, putting it back on the ground. Operation completed.
Hello, if this video helps you, like and subscribe.